Oh. Welcome to Whisky.com, where fine spirits meet. My name is Lowland. This is my son Ben, and today we're doing a live stream with the Douglas Laing whiskies.
Yes, we are a bit sponsored today. If you can have a look at the background, then you can already imagine who sponsored us. Yes, it's the Douglas Laing independent distiller and also their distributor in Germany. And the theme today is regions. And what Douglas Laing gives you is 5 different blended malts for the 5 different regions from Scotland.
So blended malt means a distillery produces malt whiskey, and then you blend together those malt whiskies to a single brand, typically here with Douglas Laing in a small batch from several distilleries from one region, and that together means a single blend.
Yeah. So, who is actually Douglas Laing, who produces these whiskies? Douglas Laing is an independent bottler from Glasgow.
Not a blend, a single blend.
Bottler.
No, sorry. What I just said was completely crap.
Single blend?
It's a blend.
It doesn't exist, right?
There is one distillery which can, but it's a blended malt.
It's a mixture of different malts from one region.
Yeah.
So, but the bottler Douglas Laing, and there is the leader of the company, and here you can see the guy. It's Fred Laing. I've met the guy already, and you've been with me, and he's running the company, but it's a family company.
And you can see he's standing on the stairs, up the stairs at Douglas House from Douglas Laing. I think it's the grandfather. It's in Glasgow, in one of those Victorian houses, wonderfully placed and beautiful places inside, and several stories, and up below the roof we had a wonderful tasting up there and had a live stream there. There also the second picture.
Yeah, he looks like a good person, says Johannes Oster. He is a very funny and very pleasant guy to be with. He always has a good laugh, and here you see the family. It's Fred Laing as the father of the family now.
This is the right one, not
the right one, yeah. And to the left is his daughter and his son-in-law. And in the middle you see, what is it, a fox terrier, you call it?
A fox terrier.
And so this is the family who leads the company right now. And they are currently like a bit of a transition from the older generation to the younger generation. And yes, he has a quality mustache. I like that mustache. So, do I have more? Yes. Now we're going from the Laing family and the Douglas Laing independent bottler to the different regions of Scotland. The different regions of Scotland, we have divided it into 5 regions. In the early times, you could divide it into 6 regions, but for this tasting set from Douglas Laing, we're dividing it into 5 regions. The last region, the Campbelltown, is not that important anymore. Not that well-known region. So we start off with the Lowlands, which is kind of the area where most of the Scotsmen live, with Glasgow and Edinburgh as the very big cities. And to the south, it's only a bit hilly with a lot of farming. And then further in the north we have the Highlands, very famous for the Highlander, the film, Sean Connery, and the Highland charge, which was traditional Highland charge with saber and no pants. And it's very hilly and very romantic.
It's rough on the west coast and very smooth and gentle on the east coast.
And in the mountains it can become pretty cold and a lot of snow.
Yep.
And then we have the brown region inside this big red region, which is the Speyside, which is called after the River Spey, and the Speyside is defined as everything along the River Spey and all the rivers that feed the River Spey. So there is a lot of area that counts to the Speyside, and it's the region where there are the most distilleries, I think, in the world, isn't it?
Probably at least the most distilleries per square mile.
Yeah.
The density is very high.
And then you look around, a bit lighter brown are the islands. To the north we have Orkney, then we have Harris, but we'll go into that a bit later. And the islands are a bit different to the Highlands in terms of legislation-wise, but we'll also come to that a bit later. And in the very south you have Ireland, and a bit north of Ireland you see a yellow island, which is a bit smaller, and that is a very iconic island. That is the island of Islay, and that is known for that very, very peaty whiskey. And yeah, we'll find that in the very end. But we'll start off with the lowlands.
And the specialty of the lowland was that there you were allowed to produce whiskey because the taxman was able to tax you. And then there was an artificial border to the north, which does not match the channel between Glasgow and Edinburgh, but a little bit further north, because that was the region which was, well, already has roads and trains and everything, so that the taxman was able to go there and tax you. But in the Highlands up north, it was very, very difficult. And so they just forbid to produce whiskey up there until the time of 1823, 1824. Then a king who liked Highland malt whiskey said, well, I'm the king. We stopped that funny thing, the unwanted prohibition up there. And so then the lowlands got less and less in importance, and after several decades, then the distilleries in the south didn't have that quality because they were far more protected, and whenever you protect an industry, quality goes down and prices go up. So they produced a lot of easy whiskey and not the quality, and therefore people remembered that and said, no, lowland isn't that. So that today only very few distilleries are producing in the lowlands. There had been some new in the last 10 or 15 years, but the amount of distilleries in the lowlands is very, very low, very, very small.
So the style of the region, because every region has a bit of a style, and the region's style is more mild and not sherry casks, so it's more bourbon casks and lighter whiskies, and also lighter as in flavors light. And many people tend to say, yeah, it's triple distilled, but
it's not really that true. There's there are more distilleries triple distilling in the Highlands than in the lowlands, but the percentage of distilleries in the lowland producing with triple distillation is higher.
Yeah, that's because 2 or 3 of them are triple distilling.
1 or 2.
1 or 2. Okay, so but how do the lowlands look like? And yes, this is a typical lowland, a field. Yeah, there's a lot of farming going on. Also a bit of sheep farming, but more of the grain farming from Scotland is done in the lowlands. And there are also barley fields, and they are then bundled up, and all the grain of the barley is going to the big malters.
You can see a distillery. You can see a distillery,
Yes,
the chimney.
It's actually a Highland distillery, but this looks like the lowlands. Yeah, you have slight hills only, and so a lot of grain farming. But there's also farming in the Highlands, yes. And then we have a lowland distillery, and this is pretty much the distillery that isn't that featured in the first whiskey?
They didn't tell where.
They didn't tell it. Okay, so yeah, when you drive through the lowlands and you actually take a close look, there are a few distilleries, and this is like one of the scenes that
But
you
they
might
are
find.
widely spread and not easy to reach.
Yeah.
They are a little bit away from the tourist routes.
But I think there are now 2 or 3 distilleries are being built now,
Yeah.
so the lowlands are getting back into shape now.
Yeah, the first one we're trying here is the Epicurean. And I had to look that word up.
Yeah, it's not a common word to use, is it?
No. So it's the one, on one side it's the connoisseur, on the other side is a hedonism guy. So this is one looking for the experience, for the parties going on. And you can see him. Does it look like Fred? No, it's a black beard. And this hat. So it's non-chill filtered. It's a small batch release. It's 46% ABV. And
Unfortunately, I'm not a mustache guy.
yeah.
I don't think I could grow that mustache.
Yeah, here we are. Looks quite light. And we do not have to open that bottle because we have this miniature tasting set. And here we start.
Which region is the one from? Sorry that I had to go for 4 minutes. We're still with the lowlands. We still started off with lowlands, the first region.
So we're working up south to north and then spread around Scotland.
Douglas Laing does not color their whiskey, neither do they believe in chill filtering for all of the 5 whiskies we're gonna try today.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's why they're so light. Now, some of them are light, but this is actually meant to be like that because it's the style of the lowlands, and what Douglas Laing wanted to do is really embrace the style of the region. And they have to use the whiskey from the region.
So, and typically people say, well, it's the microclimate from the region, but there had been some investigations and the climate is quite stable on the coast. And so the air coming from the islands, just 20 minutes later, they're on pass through the lowlands. So it's the same air, nothing else, but it's the people. So the people told or moved their wisdom, their knowledge about production from generation to generation, and they moved a little bit from distillery to distillery, but only in the region, not moving from one region to another. So the whiskey making process and the taste resulting from that, the construction drawings from the pot stills, they were, well, equal or comparable in a single region. So the taste from that region is comparable between the distilleries. That's the people which give the whiskey its particular taste.
Mm-hmm. So what you got? For all of you guys who have the whiskey in the glass, most of you are the German ones who follow us here. What do you smell?
I smell a light fruitiness, some maltiness, a freshness, and some grassy, fresh notes. It's light, it's fresh. It's easy, and it's lighter than those 46 point something, 46.2 ABV suggest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a very, very light one. Bit of a smooth one. A grassy one with a bit of a grain note, bit of a barley note. The lightness also manifests itself a bit with a citric note. I like it. It's an easy sipping whiskey.
Yeah, a starter.
Cheers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, juicy, fruity, friendly, mouth-watering. Wow, very, very good. And you can see those miniatures are only half full because we had a tasting half an hour ago. And there we had all those. And I would say after the first sip, now with the second sip with this whiskey, they are even getting better.
Mm-hmm.
So this one is much more intense than before.
I find it feels a bit younger. It doesn't have any faults of a young whiskey that I've found yet. You can find a bit of that pear note that you also have in most of the new makes, combined with a nice sweetness from, I would say bourbon casks or bourbon hogsheads, combined with a bit of a, was it heather or herbs or something like that?
Floral note. So
Somebody
it was said it's quite difficult to get those that bottle in his region because it's not that popular, and that's typical for the lowlands. People say lowlands too light, not for me, so they avoid buying lowlands. But this one is definitely a buy.
Yeah, I like it. It's an easy one, but it's not that complex. So I like it. But it's an easy sipping one. Would you recommend it to a beginner?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, but I would tell them, so this is a lighter version. Most of the whiskeys will have more oak in it.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the map then. We just left the lowlands, and when you go north of the lowlands, you enter the highlands. Yes, and then there are only people running around with kilts, and they're fighting each other because there can only be one. And now, so the highlands are a big region, the biggest region of Scotland, and technically the region that has been left out there, the Speyside, is also part of the highlands, but it's a special region of the highlands. Yeah, and when you go down very south, you come to Campbelltown, or the border to the lowlands, and in the very north, Wick, you have the coast, and yeah, it's pretty cold up there, and the days in the winter are very, very short. There's a lot of heather growing there, a lot of hills, but not that high as, let's say, the Alps in Austria or Germany, or from everywhere you are. The island doesn't have really big hills, does it?
The highest is Ben Nevis with a roughly 3,000 feet. And on the east coast, with the capital of Aberdeen, there you have green flowing hills, and a lot of farm growing. And on the west coast, you have a rough, stony coast with the islands just in front of them. Very few agriculture, harsh winds from the Atlantic Ocean. So it's very, very different between east and west. And there is a division, there's a geologic fault from Inverness to Fort William, cutting the Northern Highlands from the Highlands, and in between lies Loch Ness, and it's quite a straight geological fault. And in the northern part of the Highlands, there are fewer whiskey distilleries than in the south, because the density of population in the north is very, very low.
Yes. So you already mentioned back in the days it was all illegal distilling until 1823, when King George V said...
You remember him?
Someone wrote it in the chat.
You believe him?
Or maybe that guy is not telling the truth. But I think it's King George V. And he made it legal.
Henry VIII.
Henry VIII. Nah, Henry VIII was the other guy. And so back in the days, then you had to pay taxes, and everybody in the next years became legal, got registered, and that's why so many distilleries are registered for 1823, 24, or 25.
That's it. Yeah.
Only very few are registered 23. King George IV. Maybe I've read it wrong. So, but how do the Highlands look like? Pretty much like the Lowlands, except you had to pass many hills to get to the Highlands. And there are a lot of valleys, so these hills don't look that high, but they're really hard to drive over because there's nothing going up. There are no roads going up, only gravel roads. And this is a typical picture of like the Highlands.
But it's
look
not in
like.
the Highlands.
Yeah, it's not like the Highlands,
the
but it so looks like the Highlands.
It's on the Isle of Arran. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a guy coming up with a big claymore and yelling "freedom," and then you realize it's American. But when you go through the Highlands, you cannot go through the Highlands and see at least one of the distilleries. And if you look at the distilleries, most of the distilleries, distillery area is mostly covered by warehouses, because you need a lot of warehouses to mature all that whiskey.
And there's a place where always vapor is rising and good smell comes from. So this is the still house, and you can smell it miles away when the wind is right. So you find the distillery by your nose.
Mm-hmm. So, Highlands. What do you have for the Highlands?
Highlands, we have a whiskey called Timorous Beastie. You get the empty.
Timorous Beastie.
Timorous Beastie.
And here's a nice mouse.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Wrong picture. That was me. Yeah. Timorous Beastie. There's a mouse on it. You have the bottle.
Yeah, and it looks like, the label looks like a stamp with teeth around it. And a beast, I learned a beast might also be a midge. Those midges, so it's the pests. Mm-hmm. And this is the Timorous Beastie. So it will vanish quite fast, and then you have the pest in your head.
Timorous is
anxious.
Scared.
Yeah,
scared.
Probably something in between.
Yeah. So is Timorous a well-used word in the English language? I've never heard that before. For all of you native American speakers, English speakers.
Yeah, so we have a delay in it, 10-20 seconds.
I think it should be 8, but let's have a look.
Okay.
So
it's also a small batch release, and it's 46.8 this time. So all have different ABVs. And
so it goes back to the poem of Robert Burns.
Yes, I read that here. The original Timorous Beastie, immortalized in Robert Burns' famous Scots poem "To a Mouse," was a timid little field mouse, echoing our national bard's wit. Ours is most certainly not for the faint-hearted. That's not for a non-native speaker. Yeah, this is for a non-native connoisseur.
I don't know. Maybe it's a Scottish word. Timorous.
So we have a dark bottle here. No idea why they did that. It's quite a light whiskey, but not
maybe to sell better.
Lighter, not lighter than the Epicurean.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say this is bourbon cask, refill bourbon casks, hogsheads. Greetings from Brazil. Quite hot down there.
Mm-hmm.
So there's barley, floral notes. I have some vanilla, sweet vanilla, probably a little bit of honey. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's a little bit like that, but I would say it's a bit more intense, also a bit more aggressive, with a bit more sweetness and also a little bit of a grainy note, malty note, honey note. I like the honey in there.
So the taste is much more complex than the Epicurean, I would say. Yeah. Quite some apple, so fresh fruitiness.
Okay. I like it.
Yeah.
Cheers. Hmm?
So in the start, a little sweet, but then growing spiciness in it. Fruity, a little sweetness, sugary, fudge. Yeah, well balanced. Well, yeah, quite intense taste, but not too spicy, no bitterness at all, just friendly, wonderfully balanced. Yeah, I like that.
It's nice and sweet, and has that bourbon refill character.
Yeah.
And I would say it's older. It really has the maturity in it. It has a bit of an oak note in it, and that really brings also out the sweetness and a bit of a honey fudge note.
In the aftertaste, it's long
It's getting longer, yeah.
and a little bit of, well, these aromatic herbs like thyme, something like that. So
Yeah,
there is
the aftertaste is not sweet at all.
no, it's not sweet.
But with herbs and spices and all that.
So that whiskey grew a lot against the first sip we had an hour ago, as the first one got better as well. So you need, for these lighter whiskies, you need a second one in your mouth until it builds up. Yeah.
So it's a nice Highland whiskey, and that's what a Highland whiskey is. A good style with more intensity than the Lowlanders. So that was kind of the fight between the Highlanders and the Lowlanders, and the Lowlanders
Lost.
a bit lighter.
No, they won.
And the Highlanders are just a bit more strength to it.
Yeah.
But let's go back to the map and find the next region. So the next region is the Speyside. The Speyside is part of the Highlands, but it's usually designated as the Speyside, especially on the whiskies, as the Speyside is a region that is very distinct in their character. And you already mentioned it, it's with the highest density of distilleries per square mile or square kilometers. There are a lot of valleys there, and what is interesting is it getting cold in the winter, but here we see the Spey, and the Spey flows through the region, and there are a lot of distilleries near the river, and a lot of distilleries draw their water from creeks or small rivers, from rivers that flow into the Spey. So maybe you might recognize this famous turn in the Spey. Here you have a nice picture of that, because at the bottom you can already see a little train station. And for the very, very educated guys amongst you, you might already recognize where that is from. I've already done a video about that. So, here's a...
You took that weird picture in it. So the old ancient graveyard in front of the distillery does not make people feel better having their drum.
But it's a good distillery.
Yes,
And
really.
there's a river dividing the distillery from the graveyard, so there's no haunting stuff going over the river. Or is it? So, let's talk about the Speyside. What's the Speyside known for?
they're malty, fresh, fruity whiskies from the Speyside. Not that distinct, not that intense, but more easy drinkable. And there is a higher amount of sherry cask matured whiskies in the Speyside than otherwhere. And they tell here on the writings for the Scallywag, which is the next one. Here you have the tube, and I'm reading what's standing here. Inspired by a long line of Douglas Laing family fox terriers. And this is what I feel very lucky or happy for, because we had in our family as well a fox terrier. They are real scallywags. They are. It looked exactly like that one, but ours was the seventh out of a breed, and they cut a little bit more of the tail to show officially that this one is not a hare of the official name. So we found guilty for that small guy, and so we took it, and it was our terrier for all my youthness. So our Scallywag is a beautiful sherried and richly spiced taste of Speyside, including malts distilled at Macallan, Mortlach and Glenrothes distillery. And we've seen the Glenrothes distillery just before.
Yeah, the one with the graveyard in front of it. So the style of the Speyside is a bit different to the others, because the Speyside is known for their sweetness. And for me, I don't know why for me, but also I do tend to associate it with sherry cask maturation.
Here you can see the dark sherry cask in the big bottle, and the smaller bottle is lighter, and that's not because there's another whiskey in it, because the diameter is smaller, and therefore the light passes through a shorter distance of whiskey, and therefore it does not take out that much light out of the beams into your eyes. So it appears to be lighter, but it's the same whiskey in it. The Scallywag, the small fox, has a monocle. So it looks weird, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, but it already says, didn't it already say, where's the Scallywag box? Didn't it already say that we have some casks, some different casks in it?
No, I haven't read that.
Here, extracted from many fine Spanish sherry butts selected.
Mm-hmm.
And bourbon hogsheads. So it's a mixture between bourbon hogsheads and
Sherry casks.
Spanish sherry butts.
And sherry butts are typically 500 liters, typically pensions. Sometimes it's 600. Can I get your shirt after the tasting? I think Stefan R. is the same.
Stefan R.
It's whiskey time.
It's whiskey o'clock.
Whiskey o'clock. And we're selling that as well in the English channel?
I think so, yeah, because it says Whisky.com at the top. Maybe we're not selling it in the German channel. I'm not quite sure.
So below this live tasting video, there's typically a Teespring shop, and in that you can buy those T-shirts.
So this is a lot different to the Highland malts.
Yeah, so this is definitely a sherry cask maturation. A lot of fruitiness, deeper, darker nutmeg, probably cinnamon, some orange notes. Yeah, vanilla note, but it's more spicy vanilla. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely has a bit of a spice note. And it has oranges, a bit of a spiciness. So it does combine it a little bit to that Christmas flavor that, it's not that hard with this one, but it's typical for the Speyside. That flavor when you have an orange, that very old traditional Christmas one, and you put the cloves in it, that gives you that fruitiness from the oranges, a bit of a bitter note from the oranges as well, because it's the orange peel that's giving off the orange zest, combined with that spicy note from the cloves. But this is also combined with a lot of sweetness here, with a lot of vanilla.
But it's darker.
Yeah, a bit darker than the others.
Cheers.
Cheers.
This is hefty. It's 46 ABV. It's mouth-filling. It's mouth-watering. A lot of taste in it. This light spiciness going up and down my tongue. Sweetness appearing. Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
They know what's going on.
Oh, it's really nice. But it already feels a little bit aromatic. So it has a nice sherry touch to it. It has a fruitiness. It has sweetness. But it already has a bit of a very, very light note of peat in it. Or not peat, but it has this aromatic note in it. To it. Also, it contains a bit more oak to it.
Yeah.
I'm getting a bit tired, so my live producing and the cuts to Horst are a bit late. But it's much more demanding and much more lasting.
Much more lasting. So I have no idea how the single bottles compare in prices. Sorry.
This one is in our shop. It's $37.90 in Germany. So
euros, probably dollars and pounds are the same.
Something like that.
Plus minus 10%.
But they are around 30. These whiskies.
30 to 40.
30 to 40, yeah. So the Scallywag, I think, is a bit more expensive than the others.
Okay.
But
I would suggest that the Big Pete.
Big Pete is also probably one of the. I'm not quite sure. So they're around 30 to 40. That was it. Let's say it that way.
So this is wonderful.
I like it.
So far, it's the best I had. Yeah.
So let's get back to the map. So we've just been with the Speyside. Now we go to the islands. So the islands are different to the mainland in legislation back in the days because, Great Britain was a navy country. They had a really big navy, so all the taxmen could actually, sail to the islands. And that means you could tax the people there and you could erect distilleries on that island. In the very north, we have Orkney. And then to the west, we have the Isle of Harris, right?
The big one, I think so.
Isle of Harris. No, isn't that the Lewis?
The dimensions aren't right. So the islands are too big here in comparison to the mainland. So
they're just highlighted. The island's a bit smaller than the highlighted area. Then we have the big island of Isle of Skye. They actually do have a bridge now there. Then to the south, we have the Isle of Mull. And to the north, isn't it to the north of Skye you have Harris? There's a small island near
So you
Skye.
have the Inner Hebrides, Hebridean Islands, which is Skye and Mull and so on. And then the Outer Hebrideans like Lewis, Harris and a few more. And it takes quite a while. We've been out to the Outer Hebrides and you take quite a while with a ship. And inside you also have this distillery, this island close to Glasgow. It's Arran, and there is one distillery on it. The second one is just built.
Let's have a look. You've been to the islands, and this is how the islands look like.
This is the rough shore on the west of the Highland coast. They have small spots of sand in between. The water is from time to time, it's quite warm because the Gulf Stream is passing by. You have the Inverview Gardens, we have palm trees and everything. So it's warmer than you suggest with this rough North Atlantic coast. And in the behind you can see some mountains on islands. This is quite a typical picture for the, well, not that rough areas on the west coast. Next one, quite rougher. You took that picture.
Yes.
Probably on the Isle of Skye, isn't it?
Nope, I've never been to the Isle of Skye. But this is a typical picture for the Isle of Skye, even though it's not for the Isle of Skye. But it's the west coast. Yeah, it's the rough west coast, and it's a cliff, and you can see waterfalls on the cliffs, and it's quite a beautiful region. But it is very, very windy. Very, very windy. So, we do have another picture. So that is,
Mull.
I think Mull, and we're not quite sure when we took that picture.
That might be from our whiskey database where people give us the credits for publishing that picture.
Yes, and okay. So we have another picture, and I forgot that. So that is a typical picture of an island distillery, the Isle of Jura, and that distillery is near the water, and most of the distilleries on the islands are built near the water because they were supplied by ships. There were small ships at the beginning, sail ships, later then steamships, and today they actually all go by ferry, and the ferries are, they do have trucks on them because that way you can just drive up to the ramp of the distillery for all the deliveries.
So I just have to say thank you to Sergei Kardash something who give us a super chat, and it was 149 rubles. I have no idea how much that is. Thank you very much. We will see it on the collecting.
Okay, so the islands. The islands are a bit strange because they do have peat in them. So we will have a smoky whiskey here, but it's not as rough and strong as the Isle of Islay that we're gonna have last. Did we already finish it? No.
No, but I looked because the caps are black, and that one is brass, and this one is brass as well.
So maybe black was out. Maybe they ran out of black caps.
No. I think there's an idea behind that.
Someone says it's about 1,500 euros. These 150 rubles. Somehow I doubt that.
The islands have been quite remote in the past, so that the production methods on the islands had been, say, more ancient than on the mainland, so that their old traditions kept longer, and they produce whiskey longer with a peat smell in it. So the islands have that distinct style, which is a little bit more classic than that from the Highlands and the Lowlands.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Rock Island, it was named, there is an oyster on the label. You have that tube here?
I have the tube here, yes.
There's an oyster with a pearl in it, and in former times this whiskey was called Rock Oyster, and have this thinking about the sea, the spray of the sea, so the coasts of the islands.
Mm-hmm. I think we have a bit of a longer lag in the com than the German one, because they're not all talking about how much the rubles are, and that was, for us, it was already 20 seconds ago.
Yeah, we had 146 in the chat, and now we have 139.
So
This is a little bit smoky, isn't it? Yeah.
it does have some smoke in it, yes.
So if I have to say how much smokiness is in it, I would say 15 to 20 ppm. So it's a little bit of smokiness. Not too much that you can smell what's behind that. It's fresh, maritime notes, probably a hint of saltiness. There's always a discussion if there might be some saltiness in it.
So yes, it feels a bit salty, and it definitely has some smoke in it, and it's a bit of a dry, a little bit phenolic, marine type of smokiness. From my smell, I would say 20-25% ppm.
10 to 15.
He says
Johannes
also 10
Lowland
to
said. So I would say 15. Will whiskey price drop? Alexandro Largi. Well, that depends very much on how economy moves forward in different countries. Yeah.
It really depends.
It depends. It might go up if duties are applied. It might go down if economy slows down and people try to get rid of their stocks.
Continue producing and they don't have enough casks, then the price will go below zero.
Get a bottle of whiskey and get $2 back.
No, that will not happen.
The oil price was only a carryover for the futures. It was not really a negative oil price. Sorry.
Yeah, but it would be nice to get a free whiskey.
A free bottle of whiskey.
If we could get anything out of that situation.
But at the pump, you really have to pay. So we would get, as the dealers, negative price, and we'll sell for high prices.
Nah. But it's a nice whiskey. It's
maritime. It's lightly smoky.
I think they really went for the marine and maritime flavors.
So, Slanje.
Cheers.
There's a light peppery note in it, even becoming stronger. The first sip an hour ago, I said, oh, it's not that peppery. Now it's peppery, and I would say this remembers me of Talisker. So it's a light peppery note, light smoky note, and I think now, after having a sip, the smokiness increases a little bit. So probably now we're at 20 something.
The smokiness really comes through in the taste a bit stronger. You also have more pepperiness, more spices, so it's a bit more aggressive in the taste. And yes, now in the second sip, it's a bit hot, so a bit peppery, a bit hot. So yeah, it does feel a bit like Talisker.
And in the aftertaste, now I have the licorice. Really.
Yeah, it
Long
combines
licorice, some ashes. Definitely a smoky one.
I like it.
It's becoming more and more difficult to tell which is the best one. So
I think the second round will be a bit different than the first round with
I think so.
with the ratings.
So
but 2 times 5 whiskeys is a bit long and a bit hefty. I have to say.
You got less than normal from me, and you left over. So it's not. So if you look at that, and you see we haven't emptied that, so we have probably 2 small one, 2 miniatures each, and that is for our mass. Sorry to tell you, massive.
No, it's
It's not
probably
too
because
much.
of
It's
because of my
okay.
diet. I'm not eating that much in the evening anymore. So yeah, but anyways, so we're coming to the fifth region, and the fifth region is a very, very small region. It's an island just north of Ireland and west of Scotland, and it's called the Isle of Islay. So it's technically it's an island whiskey, but everybody knows it's the Isle of Islay, and the Isle of Islay has a very distinctive style, and that is very, very smoky, and that comes from all the peat smoke on in the whiskey. And the peat cutting tradition on the Isle of Islay is very old, and here is a group where you cut peat with
a
group Artbeck.
hardback, and this is Mickey hats with the boots in the back and the blue jeans. And first we had to cut off the grassy top of the peat layer, and then you cut out that peat. It's wet, it's really heavy, and after digging out 10 to 20 briquettes, you really feel the weight of the peat. And if you're working a day, you know what you've done, really. So I'm not able to work a day up there. An hour there is hard labor.
But do you know how you define how much you have to cut peat a day? You take a flask of whiskey, you tighten it very, very good, you throw it one stone throw away, and then you work your way to the whiskey, and when you finish cutting
the bottle.
all the the whiskey that you get the bottle. If you could see the bottle of whiskey, you're gonna start cutting faster because it's ending the day, and then you have your whiskey at the end of the day.
And if the bottle breaks, if you're throwing it, bad
And
luck.
you do a hip flask with metal or something like that. So this is a typical distillery on the Isle of Islay, and I think it's
You missed to edit the picture. Water's running out on the left-hand side. So it's my picture. I did it.
You did it.
1995. There's still some smoke from the chimney that's gone today. So there are filters in it now. And it's Kalila. It's Kalila.
It's Kalila. Kalila is a very beautiful distillery. So if you're ever on the Isle of Islay, go to Kalila. On the right, you can see the glass front, and that's the still house. And when you're on the still house or in the still house, then you can look out this big, beautiful window, and a view on the other side is just as beautiful, even maybe not a bit more beautiful. Though.
This is the picture from the ferry going to Oban.
Yeah, to Jura.
To Oban.
To Oban,
To Oban.
Oh, you've been to Oban, okay. So yeah, but back to the cutting of peat. Maybe we should have arranged that photo before that. That's what you do with the bricks of the peat. You arrange them in these piles, and then you leave them out to dry, and they get
Water's running out.
Water's running out, but the layer around it is drying quicker and sealing off a bit of the moisture from the inside, and that's why peat is producing such a dense smoke, because it's a bit of a moist, earthy, brown coal brick, and that means it's producing a lot of smoke, and smoke contains phenols. So that's why the Islay whiskies are so smoky, because of the phenols. Now let's have a look how many phenols are in the big peat.
So this is the 5th of 5.
And at the very back here in this picture, you can see a lot of Big Peat bottles, because Big Peat is kind of an iconic brand now. I think it was their first really blended malt brand, and they do a lot of regional things. I think you maybe have seen my what is it, Munich edition, where I have the big stein and I jug it, and it was really bad. It was really bad video. Because I didn't replace it with tea. I actually kept the whiskey, so.
So this is really smoky. Oh, hefty. Is the Big Peat 10 years old? No, it isn't. It's all of those 5 blended malt whiskies do not have an age statement on it. You can feel that some of them are younger, some are older. You feel it by the cask influence. If it's stronger by the cask, they're typically a little bit older. And if you have a very, very peaty whiskey, the whiskey does not have to be older, because the peat going over the youthness of a whiskey. So if there's a very high peat content in a whiskey, then you will not taste the youngness. On the other hand, if a peaty whiskey matures for a longer time, then those peaty notes oxidize to more complex compounds, and the smokiness vanishes over the years. So if you would like to have a very, very peaty whiskey, you have to have it young.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so because it evaporates, right? Mm-hmm. But they don't tell you the age, but they tell you what they mixed. So we combined Ardbeg, Bowmore, Caol and Port Ellen, amongst others, to create this smoky sensation.
So I would suggest the last Port Ellen bottles from Douglas Laing are long gone now, so they will still have some Port Ellen, but I think they will just add a drop
to be able to say it.
To be able to say that. And it will also not be that easy to get some Ardbeg, but there are a lot of there are still Ardbegs out at independent bottlers. So Ardbeg is possible. Bowmore sold whiskey for a long, long time to independent bottlers because they stopped their own blend production, moved to single malts, and now they had a overcapacity and sold. And Caol, they stopped selling single malts outside the corporation, the big company, and but then they re-established the selling of casks, I think around 2006, 2007, so that there is Caol for independent bottlers again on the market.
Mm-hmm. So I've actually been to all of the independent bottlers, and in total I have seen 10 casks of Ardbeg.
There are not many left over.
There are not many left, but there are some left. Oh, it's really
very
nice.
smoky, 40, 45.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think they actually tell you it's 40 ppm.
Oh.
They actually do say that they're aiming for 40 ppm.
Uh-huh. So the price is around 40. So it's I think it's the most expensive of those 5.
Mm-hmm.
And there's typically a big demand for that. Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.
That kicks, really. It's just 46% ABV, but that kicks and mouth-watering goes in. It's clouding your mouth. It's a sweet, hefty, peaty malt whiskey. And because it's so sweet, I typically remember immediately Caol and Ardbeg. They have those sweet styles below, and the peatiness is strong, but it's a little bit, well, is not that one-dimensional as a normal young whiskey from a Islay distillery is. It's a little bit more complex because you have whiskies from different distilleries from Islay in here, but it's still sensible that's a younger one.
Mm-hmm. So it definitely feels a bit like younger whiskey. From the one-dimensional, it has a strong influence. I mean, if you buy a bottle that says Big Peat,
what do you expect?
What do you expect? So yes, peat is very the dominant flavor there. Somebody said in the chat, let's face it, it's 65. It feels like 65, but for me, the feeling of peatiness inside a whiskey doesn't really go linear with the ppms that are stated on the bottle. If you'd have like a 40 and then you have one of these crazy whiskeys with over 200 ppm, it would be just peat, but it's not. So I think most of the whiskeys become pretty similar over 40 ppm. So yes, it's a very peaty whiskey with a little bit of sweetness.
A little bit of sweetness, yeah.
So now that we have a second sip, the sweetness is a bit more experienceable. Is that a word? But you can feel it better in the second sip.
Yeah. So very good. And just before you start to do your housekeeping work here, telling about what's coming up, we will have a sequence, what we like most, and which is the best of those 5. Perhaps you're going from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which we had from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and write down your rating. Which is the best. So if the Big Peat is the best, you start with 5, and if the Epicurean is the best, you start with 1. Okay. So I'm always pointing to the wrong side because they're differently noted on the back.
Okay, so
5, 5, 5, yeah. 3, 4, Scallywag, Rock Island, Big Peat, Timorous Beastie, Epicurean. 1, 1. So the Lowlands are still not the...
For me, it changed a little bit. So mine is 3, 4, 2, 5, 1. Because the Timorous Beastie in the second sip just became a bit better.
Just became a little bit better. But for me, the Scallywag is still the best. I like that sherry influence a lot. And I'm not for that big smokiness. But the second one is the 4, the Rock Island, because it shows that Talisker style. And then I go for the Epicurean. It was so clean and fresh. Then the Timorous Beastie, and last is the Big Peat. So it was a little bit too much of smoke for me. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe my sequence would also depend a bit on the
mood,
on the feeling. And when I only have one whiskey, I'd really go for the peaty one. But if you have a sequence of them, I would really go for more of the Scallywag side of them. So there are a lot more 5 guys coming on. I think there are more guys following from the German chat, and they are really about the chat where all their friends hang around.
What whiskey is best?
These guys like the peaty one the best, I think.
Johannes Lohmann, what whiskey is best to get lady to like you? I would say take all of them, a lot of them, and then the lady doesn't matter.
What did I say on my April Fool's video? There is a German technical term for drinking whiskey and then the woman becomes more beautiful. It's called schön trinken.
Schön trinken.
The more you consume, the more beautiful all the people around you become. Also, you will become more beautiful and courageous.
Yeah. So then we have the next live tastings.
So yeah, a little bit of advertisement. So I think we have to skip the first one. So the next live thing will be an AMA. So if you'd like to ask us any questions, then
AMA about whiskey.
AMA about whiskey. So ask me anything about whiskey. It will be on the 22nd of May 2020. That will be a Friday again, and we will do it on 8 p.m. So yes, depending on the length.
Middle European time.
Middle European summertime.
Summertime.
And yeah, it always depends. The time always depends a bit on the length of the German live stream, because we don't want to sit here for like 5 hours. So we always vary the time a bit. And where do you find it? Whisky.com/live, or you are subscribed here to the channel, and YouTube is gonna show you show you the live video when we are live. So how long is the beard getting? It depends. I really want to do the, what do you call it? Braids? where you go like that. But all the hairdressers have closed. So maybe I'll get myself a little sign and go, I need a haircut.
Made hit. How old are you? Well, older than you think and younger than I feel. Oh, I got it the wrong way.
Wie kann man Horst schön trinken? So to do the schön trinken with Horst, you need a lot of whiskey. Good whiskey only.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that's it for today.
Yeah. Thank you very much for watching. And please give us a thumbs up when you leave this live stream. That always helps us out greatly. If you'd like to get the cool shirt, then have a look in the Teespring shop. Thank you very much and good night.